Best examples, a lot of what came up in the Twitter files was around COVID and the 2020 pandemic. So one of the things is Joe Rogan, who has a massive media platform, he talked about how he got COVID and he took a whole bunch of different things to try and get better with COVID, and it worked. I mean, he was better in a matter of like a few days, even though he was not vaccinated. Okay, so he was saying, I'm not vaccinated, but I did these instead, and he got better. But what's interesting is the FDA took one of those things that he took, one of the drugs that he took was called ivermectin. Ivermectin is used for parasites in water predominantly, but it's been distributed to over 1 billion people. It actually won a Nobel Prize for an important medicine. It's very safe for its profile and everything like that. But the FDA called it a horse dewormer. They said, you're not a horse, you're not a cow, stop it. The FDA, this is the government, in response to Joe Rogan, the MMA stand-up comedian commentator guy, okay, with a big podcast voice, is the FDA said this, that you're not a cow, you're not a horse. That's what you use ivermectin for. But people use ivermectin all the time for a whole bunch of different reasons. Did it help with COVID? The studies are still out. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe in conjunction with a whole bunch of other drugs, it could have some antiviral tendencies, okay? We don't really know the extent of it, but what we do know is it was vilified. And you can see in this short video, Joe Rogan posted on his Instagram him talking about how he got COVID, and then CNN broadcasted it and actually changed the color of his face. They made him look sicker than he actually was, and he has come out and he has a massive platform. So there's only so much you can do. When someone has a massive platform, if you say like, this is what's true, that's what's true, is when you have a massive platform, you can say, hey, here's actually what I said. More people listen to Joe Rogan than they do CNN. So if CNN's trying to use propaganda to say Joe Rogan's bad, his voice is actually louder than theirs. That's why it didn't work. And that's why it opened up a lot of people's eyes to what's actually happening. But you can see in this video, like how Joe Rogan actually looks different. They put a filter on it or something to make him look sicker. Meanwhile, even though he didn't get the vaccine, he bounced back very, very quickly.
And it turns out I got COVID. So we immediately threw the kitchen sink at it. All kinds of meds, monoclonal antibodies, ivermectin, Z-Pak, prednisone, everything.
So Joe Rogan's just one example, but it was so big because his platform is so big. You can look at the numbers here. There's so many people that listen to the Joe Rogan podcast that when they say a narrative that isn't aligned with what's actually happening, people see it. It's so obvious now. And that's why it's a good example to say, here's how propaganda was being used. They said that Joe Rogan said these things where there's a record of what he actually said. And this opened up a lot of people's eyes up, and it should open up yours too, to the way that government manipulation works, the way that these media companies are using propaganda to push a certain agenda. But Joe Rogan, as much as he gets labeled as like anti-vax or whatever, like he had on a lot of different perspectives during the pandemic. He had on people that were pro-vaccine. He had people on that were anti-vaccine. He had people that were very nuanced in their perspective. And getting to like, how do we know what's true? The best way to find out what's true is through dialogue and debate. In the marketplace of ideas, you give people platforms to have conversations, to share the information that they have, and then we make a judgment based on all of this information. That's not what happened. That's part of what the Twitter files were doing, is certain voices were shut down while other voices were promoted. And what you need to do is make an arena for all voices to have a conversation. So Dr. Peter McCullough should have had a public conversation with Dr. Anthony Fauci. Dr. Deborah Birx should have a public conversation with Dr. Robert Malone. So we can see, and Joe Rogan tried to do that because he brought on Sanjay Gupta, Michael Osterholm, who are more on the pro side, and then other people like Peter McCullough or Robert Malone, who are on the anti side. But then he also brought in Alex Berenson, who is a journalist who was more on the anti side, but with a little bit more nuance. He wasn't a doctor. He was just looking at the data. He said, here's what the data looks like. He brought on Robert Epstein, who talked a lot about the way that Google is run and how Google has specific agendas. And he also brought in John Abramson, who is a medical doctor and a Harvard professor, to talk about the way that pharmaceutical companies manipulate information and data and everything like that. So if you consume all of this, then you come out more informed. You hear this perspective, you hear that perspective, they both present their arguments, then you be the judicious one to say, here's what makes the most sense to me. That's your role as a citizen, to consume it all and then make a judgment based on all of the information. You don't want to listen to just these voices, just the anti-vax voices, or just the pro-vax voices, because then you're going to be ignorant about the other side. So what Joe Rogan tried to do, and I think he did fairly well, was to present all of these different pieces of information. I think he probably could have brought on more people that were better on the pro-vaccine side. But again, he did invite some of them. Dr. Peter Hotez, I believe he invited, and didn't show up to talk about it. So you can only you can only have conversations with people that are willing to talk to you. But the best approach for you is to consume all of it, hear their arguments, and then make a judgment call.
To get access to this course and many others, check out patradox.com.